All right, people, Victory and Vices podcast, we back. Me, Rory Spooner, James Veck, and Reese Henley. Big shout out to all of our new subscribers, close to 700 now, and we're aiming for 1,000 pretty shortly. So if you're new and you're watching this, hit subscribe, hit like, all that good stuff. Shout out to Kendall Rowan for the last episode as well. She was superb. So we're always looking for new guests. So if anybody is interested on coming on, drop us a DM, and we'll certainly see what we can do. So going back to the football news, because that's why we're here. And the big news was Frank Lampard. Now, we mentioned Frank in a previous podcast, probably about 2 or 3 podcasts ago, with Mikel Arteta, and there was a comparison. And it seems like Frank he's been beheaded first. The ruthless Russian Roman himself has told him, nah, you ain't staying around here anymore, son. So with that being said, lads, what's your opinion on the sacking of Frank? Do you think it's justified, or do you think he should have had a bit more time? Reece, I'll start with you first, and we'll ask Becky afterwards.
Yeah, I think the question is not so simple as should he be given more time, because I could sit here and I could tell you all the reasons why I think he should have been given more time, as I'm sure we outlined a few weeks ago. And then Thomas Tuchel, who's now come in and replaced him, could now win the next 8-9 on the bounce and get them into Champions League or title winning contention. And all of a sudden, it looks like that's the right decision after all. So I guess time will tell whether it was the right decision. But in my mind, you look at Arteta, for example. Arteta and Lampard, you can draw parallels on them over the last, 6 weeks to 2 months, and they're, we talked about them together. Should they both be sacked? Should one of them be sacked? And I think we pretty much agreed that they should be given more time. And I think Arsenal are really reaping the benefits from doing that. I know obviously they've had that a bit earlier. I think Arsenal have won 5 out of their last 6. And so they're showing that, showing a bit of faith can pay dividends. But I mean, what you would say for Frank Lampard is it probably wasn't a tangible style of football. It wasn't easy on the eye, and a lot of money spent, like considerably more than Arsenal, gives you considerably less time. And also, I think what you're taking on when you become Chelsea manager. It doesn't matter if you're a legend of the club, probably bought in 2 or 3 months, to be fair. But in today's day and age, especially at Chelsea, you don't get longer than 18 months. And as well as he did last season to get them to Champions League, and to be fair, he was doing well in the Champions League this season. Unfortunately, some things are inexcusable, and the way they've played and where they are in the league versus how much they spent in the summer, I guess, whilst I don't think it was necessarily the right decision, or rather at the right time, I can understand it.
Yeah. Becky, what are you saying? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I would say Reece has hit the nail on the head there, really. And in particular, he highlighted a point that I was going to bring up, which is in comparing Lampard and Arteta, one of the key differences is the money spent between them. They're absolutely the same in terms of the bad runs that they were going on, ex-players of the club. And like you said a few episodes back, we discussed should they be given more time, and we agreed that they both should be given more time. But the fact that Lampard spent, I believe, £220 million really puts Abramovich in an awkward position then, no matter who he is, Frank Lampard or not. And you said, Reece, it perhaps bought him an extra month or 2, which I would agree with. And you're also right in that you do know what you're taking on when you do accept the Chelsea job. Whether Frank thought that because he is Frank Lampard, maybe he would have been afforded maybe a little bit more time, I don't know. But yeah, we said a few weeks ago neither of them should be sacked, and that they deserve more time. But we saw this coming, did we not? We said a few weeks back that if his form didn't really lift, or the team's form didn't have a massive change of direction, then his head would be on the chopping board. And for sacking managers that don't get him results quickly, especially when he spends a lot of money or invests a lot of money. So, I mean, who are we to tell him any different? He's got a relatively good track record of sacking and hiring managers that go on to win trophies. They tend to have a dry spell of 2 or 3 years, and then they'll win a league title or a cup or something. So he should have been given more time, but we ultimately knew that he never would.
Yeah, do you know what's interesting that I've learned from this scenario that I kind of knew is that I never want to have a Russian boss. They don't interest me. I think they're a different breed. Like, I was watching a thing the other day about, I don't know if they're banned from, is it the Winter Games or the Olympics or something, due to doping athletes, and they are a nation, right? That they're a win at all cost nation. This is slightly off topic, right? But I watched a video the other day about a thing called blockchain in relation to Bitcoin, right? Because I was doing a bit of research on it. And the Russians are absolutely desperate to be at the front of that, because whoever controls that is effectively going to control the economy. And it's embedded into them. Like, they are this win at all costs country and culture. And Abramovich, if you believe his life story, started off as relatively poor. So, he was born in the Russian backwaters, and he had next to nothing. So you then have to ask yourself the question, how does a guy with next to nothing accumulate a wealth of a couple of billion in Russia? Well, the answer is you've got to do some pretty despicable things probably to get that type of money. So sacking somebody like Frank Lampard is nothing to him. That's like he could do that before breakfast. Do you mean that he doesn't give a shit. And I'd like to point that out. I never want to have a Russian boss in my life, purely on the basis I'd be out of a job very quickly.
Yeah, I think the thing with Frank Lampard is it was almost harsh giving him the job, because he did such a good job last season, getting them to the Champions League on basically next to nothing in terms of not being able to sign anyone, and basically only having Pulisic coming in, and having a relatively poor squad, in all honesty. And he'd only been manager for a year, did a good job at Derby, but really didn't have time as a manager, or even have years as a coach or an assistant coach. He did a good job, but he didn't have his time to develop his own style of play. And he didn't have anything to necessarily bring to the table on that basis. And then he had all that money thrown at him and all these good players thrown at him, but not necessarily the experience of knowing how and where to use them.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about it inviting as well, Becky. I wanted to ask you about that in particular. Obviously, there was talk of Alonso. He was unhappy. There was divisions. There was Ødegaard. There was divisions. What do you make of that in terms of Frank's man management?
It's difficult to say, really, because the thing is, when situations like this occur, the rumours come out, don't they? And is there sort of rifts within the dressing room? Is there fights and arguments? And there's been a lot of question marks raised over Frank's management style and in the dressing room. And I think the real answer is we don't really know. I would be surprised. I say that like I know Frank well, which I obviously don't. But it would surprise me. But I guess at the same time, football is football in the Premier League, and that's it wouldn't surprise me. So I don't really know what to say on that one. I can't see it being true. It's probably, like most things are, blown out of proportion. One thing I don't know whether we wanted to go on to, but while we were sort of on this topic, Spoon, obviously we had a question. Which I thought might be an appropriate time to sort of bring that into the discussion as well. And obviously, so the question was from a friend of mine, obviously a friend of yours as well, Spooner, Josh Roberts. He asked, with regards to ex-players or ex-legends of the club, really, like Franca, Ollie, Zidane, players like that, is it really just a poison chalice taking on the management role of your former club?
You cut out a little bit.
This connection is sometimes good, sometimes bad. We just don't know what we're going to get, really, do we?
Yeah. You cut out a little bit, bro. I can hear you. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the question, I know what you're referring to. So, is it a poison chalice taking on, the role of of a manager when you played for said club previously? Yeah, to a degree, I think it is. But a lot, you've got to understand, footballers, like I said to you before, lads, they have incredibly fragile egos. And these egos, when you leave the game, and they don't live a normal life like the rest of us, right? They can be retired by 33, 34. All of a sudden then, the thing that you've grown up doing since you were 6, 7 years old is taken away from you. And you don't know anything else. You literally know nothing else. So for a lot of these lads, they're quite content. They'll go like, you know what, I've had so much scrutiny over the past 20 years. Let me just find a nice warm spot in Barbados. I'll chill out. You might see me on social media every few days. Beyond that, I don't particularly care about football. But then you get other people, it's like a thirst, it's like a craving, it never really goes away. And you want some sort of involvement in the game. And some people are willing to put their neck on the line to keep getting that sort of adrenaline rush and that success, because that's all they know and that's all they want. It is a trade-off, because you have to understand your legacy is very much at risk if you take on a job and you fuck it up. Like, you look at Ryan Giggs now at Manchester United, right? There's a whole generation of kids that never saw Ryan Giggs play football, right? But they know he was Louis van Gaal's assistant, and Louis van Gaal's Man United were trash. They were horrendous. And they associate Ryan Giggs with that. And I think to myself, that's mad that they look at Ryan Giggs in that light, because he was just majestic. And obviously, he had his personal problems, so to speak, but he was an incredible footballer. And Giggs' legacy, to a degree, was tarnished a little bit. And I hope that doesn't happen with Solskjaer, but it might, depending on how things go. It certainly happened with Lampard. So, yeah, it's
just think, they're obviously an ex-player, and if they're that good of a manager, or an up-and-coming manager, they could manage someone else, another decent-sized club, another big club, where, should they fail, like a Guy Neville, he went to Valencia, go that went. But he's still going to be a legend at Manchester United because he didn't take on a job of that size,
Yeah, and I don't think Ryan Giggs' legacy is necessarily going to be known as Van Gaal's assistant, more as it is a wife beater. But with regards to the question in hand, I think it's not a qualification, is it? Being a legend at a club. It helps, when you have the fans on side since day one. But let me just use 2 examples for you. So Bobby Robson, at Newcastle United, always wanted to manage Newcastle, always wanted to manage England. And he'd played for both as a player and was quite successful. The difference was that before taking on those jobs that he felt that he could do well in, but also he wanted to make, a good fist of those jobs, he cut his teeth at other clubs, He had a managerial career which spanned Europe, but also he was extremely successful with Ipswich Town and others. So he was qualified to take that job, even with a club legend status. Then you look at people like Paul Scholes, Paul Scholes obviously going to a smaller club, not being able to do it, lasting only 8 or 9 games, getting sacked or walking away. Just imagine if he'd ended up being appointed Manchester United manager, just because he's a club legend. Yeah. Clearly can't cut it in management. Clearly probably will never be a good manager, and just because he's got his coaching badges and a legendary status, he could have actually been at the helm of one of the biggest clubs in the world. So to answer the question, no, it's a bad idea, not unless that person has gone to an Oldham Athletic like Paul Scholes did, or someone in the Championship like Frank Lampard did, someone in the Scottish League like Steven Gerrard is, and doing a very good job out there. And has shown that they actually can do it, and they have the skills to man manage, but also the tactical nous to be able to do those things, and also the career experience to handle a big club. Because if you look at people like Alex Ferguson, he handled that club. He was Mr. Manchester United. He knew everyone within the club. He basically ran the club, and he had the minerals and had the experience to be able to handle a club like that. And that's where a lot of clubs are going wrong.
Yeah, the one you touched upon just there, Reece, which is the next one, which is going to come into this scenario, is Gerrard and Liverpool, because I could very much see that happening. We'll touch upon Liverpool actually while we're here, lads, and we'll segue into it very nicely. The Liverpool wheels have fallen off a little bit. Before we came on, I was talking to you both about a podcast that I watched. I can't remember if it was on Stephen Howson's official channel or the Stretford Paddock one, but basically the video was titled "Why Liverpool Won't Win the League," and he was with an Irish journalist who was based in Russia, and it was a very, very interesting podcast. So for anybody that's looking for a good watch, go and watch it, and shout out to Stephen Howson as well, because he makes very good content. Basically, this journalist was talking about, I'm paraphrasing a lot of it, right, because it's like an hour long, so I'm just going to streamline it and condense it. He was talking about how Liverpool's assistant manager, Liverpool, they knew last season they had to win the league, right? So they went they went nuclear. So Liverpool copied the cyclist performance. So basically, they were using asthma pumps for a lot of their players to basically perform better. What they were also doing was dosing Liverpool players up with a lot of caffeine. And the caffeine, obviously, once you have a certain amount of caffeine, your body develops a tolerance to it. So you've got to go up and up and up and up and up, and you've got to up the dosage. So these Liverpool players were absolutely smashing the caffeine, smashing the asthma pumps. They went completely nuclear, and they ended up winning the league and everything else. But the problem they have now is that has caught up with them. So when you take into account the way they sort of attacked that season, plus obviously COVID and the lack of break they've had, they're now developing a lot of muscle injuries. There's a lot of players out of form. When you approach a season like that in such a tough manner, it really affects like your neurological system and your nervous system. And there's a lot of Liverpool players now who they're not performing, and I don't think they've got a lot left in the tank. Like they need maybe like a little bit of investment or spark from somewhere. But the Liverpool, that was an interesting video. And I just wanted your take on it, lads, because it seems like they've almost rinsed that Liverpool team dry. There doesn't seem to be much left. So Reece, what's your take on it initially?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things from what you just said. I mean, first of all, talking about their different athletes' performance and their mentality and the way the sports science behind what they did last season is one thing. But then also you have to consider the fact that the nature of the COVID pandemic and what that did to the season and how atypical that was. So I'm not necessarily sure how much comparison and parallels we can draw from those two things. But talking about your question, obviously, is how have the wheels fallen off? Well, the wheels fell off in October, and somehow Klopp kept driving the bus until December. Van Dijk got injured, Gomez got injured, Matip got injured. Fabinho was injured for a while as well. I think there's been periods when Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold have been injured as well. Yeah. For the last 3 or 4 games, they've had Henderson and Fabinho playing centre half. I mean, we could talk about their form and have they finally, does that cycle of success come to an end? Possibly. We don't know. Do they need investment? Probably. Is Firmino not doing anymore? Not in my opinion. But they have 2 centre-halves there which complement each other really well, in my opinion, Matip and Van Dijk, and obviously Gomez and Van Dijk work well together as well. And when Van Dijk is in that team, it's almost like they've got 12 players on the pitch, and he counts for 2. And it gives Robertson and Alexander-Arnold license to basically just play as essentially wingers. And then they end up with this 5-pronged attack. Bring into the fact as well that Thiago's been in and out of the team, not really fit for any consistent amount of time. There's been COVID in there as well. They have been unlucky, and at some point this season, I think they'll have most, if not all, of their players back, and I think we will see that form just click back into place. Maybe with one signing in January, possibly. We don't know what will happen in the window. I think to say that their form is, bang stopped, I think I would be wrong. I think that they are struggling at centre half. They're definitely more fragile than they were. I think not having Fabinho in central defensive midfield is hurting them, even though he's a good centre half. Yeah. They're missing Van Dijk, and essentially they're missing Fabinho in their midfield as well. So they're struggling, but I'm pretty sure that over time, when players come back, they'll find their rhythm again.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Becky?
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about that podcast you listened to, because, like Reece said, I'm unsure of how much of that is true. if any of it, if all of it. But what is uncommon is the number of injuries that they have had. And so we can blame the pandemic and whatnot. But in comparison to the other clubs in the league, they seem to have been hit way harder than the majority of other clubs, which may possibly tie into what you said with sort of what they were doing with sports science, and is it now the knock-on effect with muscular injuries?
Yeah,
we couldn't possibly know for sure, but maybe there is something in that which has caused this season for them to have these amount of injuries. Maybe that would make a bit more sense, but we don't know. But like Reece said, from October time, things started going a bit south for them. Klopp managed to sort of negotiate them through it with, they dug in and they got results when we didn't think they would. But I think it's what we're seeing now is just a combination of everything sort of just going slowly wrong. The amount of injuries, and then the results or the draws and a couple of defeats started sneaking in, which has probably affected their confidence. And obviously, as their confidence has decreased, they went through that spell where they weren't even scoring goals. And that to me, that's all sort of just comes together as just one sort of larger problem. And so, you look a couple of weeks ago, they were top of the league.
Yeah.
And you look at them now, and if Spurs beat them on the weekend, and then Everton win a game in hand, that they sit 6th or 7th in the league, I think, if results don't go their way, which is bizarre. If you'd have said 2 weeks ago they'd be sit 6th or 7th in the league, you'd think we were dreaming. So it just again shows how tight this league is. And like Reece said, should they get a couple of those injuries back, I think Van Dijk's the only real one that could be out for long term. But they get the rest of them back and they click, they're still in with a shout. It looks unlikely now, but I wouldn't bother writing them off because the league is so unpredictable.
Yeah, he's right. And one thing that we need to think about as well from the sports science point of view is, yes, they've been hit with a lot of games in a short period of time, and yes, they might have this whole mentality which isn't conducive to a long-term, years and years of cycle of success, and yes, they don't have a deep squad to be able to do it possibly, but. Look at Van Dijk's injury. That was a freak injury. It was a horrendous challenge from Jordan Pickford that caused that injury. And I don't believe that was his leg was weaker due to overplaying or playing more times than he should have. Look at Joe Gomez. Ever since he was 17 or 18 in the Charlton squad, he's had a track record of long-term bad injuries. And that's bit them as well. Joel Matip, yeah, okay, that's a muscular injury, and Trent and Andy Robertson, have had injuries, but nothing too prolonged. And Alisson as well, at the start of last season, got an injury. So there is a track record there, but there is an effect, isn't there? What you would say when a squad aims and tries to climb that mountain that seems unconquerable. You look at the Germany team in 2014, you look at the Spain team in 2010, in football, for example, and they climb that mountain and they get to that peak, and then what happens then? There's nowhere to go after that peak, and there's only one way to go, and that's down. And Germany got knocked out 2018 in the group stage. Spain got knocked out 2014 in the group stage. Well, do I think Liverpool will finish outside the top 4? No, but it would fit a pattern.
That leads nicely into what I was going to bring up next, lads, because the Liverpool scenario, we'll come off it for a minute, because what I'll do, when I get a chance as well, I'll send you the link to the podcast. I'll probably put it on our Twitter page, because it's a very good watch. I think you'll enjoy it. It was really, really interesting. But Reece, you made you put a question in our WhatsApp group earlier on about West Ham. Could they come in the top 4? If West Ham were to come into a top 4, and Becky, I'll start with you. Let's say hypothetically they, for whatever reason, they make the top 4. Who would be the other 3 in the top 4 with West Ham?
Oh God, these questions, especially this season of all seasons, it is almost impossible to try and answer that. Before I do answer it, a big shout out to David Moyes, can we just say, at the moment, because you go back last year, the year before, and he was being criticised for doing poor jobs. He was at West Ham before they got rid of him, didn't they? I think they got him back, and look what he's produced now. It almost reminds me of the times back a few years ago when he was doing well with Everton and getting them close to the top 4. But to bring that around, to answer your question, so if West Ham get top 4, who are the other 3? So I would assume they would be 4th, and I would probably go City, United, Liverpool would be the other 3. Don't ask me what order, because I really have no idea at the moment.
Yeah,
City look imperious at the moment, which is a little bit alarming, because the United seem to potentially be looking to mount their first real serious title challenge since Fergie retired. You know, the wheels could come off, but it's the closest they've been for many a year. And then you've got, we were talking a few weeks ago about City looking a bit sort of lackluster, and all of a sudden they've just turned that on. So City, United, Liverpool, I think Leicester would fall away, and then West Ham then perhaps, if you had to push me.
Yeah, what do you say?
It's a strange one, isn't it? Like you said, with Man City. For me, Man City, I think, will win the title. If I had to put my house on anything right now, it would be Man City. The reason being is because they have hit such good form. They've found a system now where they can defend, which has eluded them really for a year and a half. Cancelo has hit some brilliant form, absolutely fantastic form, and that kind of solves a problem that they've had at fullback. And also puts a lot of pressure on Kyle Walker to step up. So that's been huge for them. And let's not forget, they've done all of this. They've grinded out 1-0s. They've just beaten West Brom 5-0. They're finding goals. All this without a centre forward. And so they'll make a decision, either probably at the end of the season, but possibly in January. And they'll make a decision. Is Sergio Aguero our man? And I believe that if not, then Guardiola will refine the system until the summer, or they will replace him with a centre forward. Yeah. And Aguero will come back into that team in the next month and a half. And let's be honest, he will score a few goals, and he will score important goals, especially in the big games. And that's what I think will get them through. Man United, like you said, could be anything. They could go on and win every game. The way they're playing, they could win every game apart from the games against the big teams and win the title or mount a challenge. Or they could lose against Arsenal in a couple of weeks and the wheels could fall off, and then they could finish outside the top 4. It's a brave man who predicts it. Tottenham have got Mourinho. They've got a good team. They've got Harry Kane and Son playing well. They've got Reguilon in brilliant form. Aurier is playing for them. They've got good defence there. But I don't think they can get in. Leicester, they're in the chasing pack as well. Liverpool, I don't know. I don't think West Ham can do it. I really don't. But what you say about David Moyes is, yes, he's doing a great job with them. The style of football he's playing is fairly vanilla, is fairly traditional, but he's been given time to kind of build a squad that he wants and phase out the bad eggs. You look at Felipe Anderson, Yarmolenko, some of these players who were playing under the previous manager and just weren't doing it really. They were kind of down tools. They've signed Soufal at right back, who I put in my team of the season so far, who's been absolutely fantastic. Weighed in with a few assists, couple of goals. They signed Thomas Souček at the start of last season. And I think I read a stat that other than Bruno Fernandes, no midfielder has contributed more goals. And he seems to be like the Fellaini that was missing from his team. Mikel Antonio has kind of hit the form that he's always hinted that he would hit. And then they've got people like Jared Bowen and people in the wide areas that, whilst they're not the most talented in the world, they are kind of the workhorses. They just put the balls in the box. They do simple things repeatedly, and it kind of gives you consistent results. But are they going to be able to fend off Leicester, Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea with the new manager and all the money that's behind them? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Can I just say as well, just to point out while I have the opportunity, I did predict before the season that the top 3 would be City, United, Liverpool. And you can insert the meme if you want, Spoon. But I have to say, you all laughed at me. I do have to say, who's laughing now? And you know them I'm on about. Because Reece, you did laugh at me. You laughed at me a hell of a lot, and I have brought it up in the WhatsApp. And this may very well fall apart, but I'm just putting it on record since that one, because as it stands, it's not turning out to be too bad of a prediction. Take West Ham at the equation, but I'm just going to give myself a little bit of early credit here. What a call that would turn out to be.
Look, you can have the W right now until the wheels fall off, at which point you're going to have to get bantered by Reece. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? It's very open to interpretation, shall we say. So with one of the teams you actually mentioned there, Reece, Arsenal, we'll come on to next. This has been probably one of the most boring transfer windows in the history of the world. It's very much a COVID transfer window where everybody's like, you know what? We can't afford bread and milk, so why are we going to buy a player? Well, Arsenal found a little bit of money, and they've gone and got Ødegaard from Real Madrid. Now, I'm pretty sure we've mentioned Ødegaard on this podcast a couple of times. He is a very talented boy, and at Real Sociedad, he was one of their best players. He pushed them up the league. He was one of the best players in La Liga. He had found form, he'd found consistency, and he looked like he was going to go back to Real Madrid and really do some bits. But Zidane had other ideas, as Zidane always does. For some reason, if you have any... It's weird that Zidane, a flair player, right, who had all the skill in the world, every time he sees a flair player, just goes, no, he's not for me. Yeah, Bale, James Rodriguez, Ødegaard, all these players, he's just like, no, I don't want him. So he's gone out on loan to Arsenal. Look, Arsenal have a gem, right? He is talented, he is young, he is hungry. I think he speaks fluent English, being that he's from Norway as well. So he'll have no trouble settling into London. What he provides is depth. He provides competition. He provides a whole lot of skill. Smith Rowe has a bit of competition now, so that's going to kick him on again. And I just wanted your opinion on the signing, lads. What do you think of Ødegaard? I think it's a terrific signing for Arsenal in the short term. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, we put the poll on our Instagram. Is it a good signing? And I think it looks, early days, it looks like it's going to be overwhelmingly majority saying it's a good signing, and I tend to agree. Ødegaard is a player that still in my mind is 14 years old, but apparently is 22, which has really surprised me. And he's been doing it in La Liga to some extent. I think when he first joined Real Madrid, I think it was too much for him. Got loaned out to the Dutch league, kind of proved himself a little bit, earned his move. His career trajectory has kind of been okay in terms of what you would hope for a player to make it to the top. Mm-hmm. But look at his numbers. I mean, they're not great. They're not poor for a 22-year-old, but they're not great. Is he going to be brought in and is he going to light the Prem up? I mean, possibly. We don't know. He's 5'11". It's not a bad build. He could be strong, skillful. He's got a good shot on him. And like you said, so he provides competition to Smith Rowe. I think he'll probably start ahead of Smith Rowe. I hope he doesn't sort of stunt his development. But it's a loan signing. What's the risk? What's the harm? Bring in a player of his standard. My only concern, and the only concern is, and then there is a flip side to the argument as well, is why can't he do it at Sociedad? Why are they willing to let him go on loan? And if the answer to that question is David Silva's keeping him out of the team for now, but they think that he's going to be the real deal long term, and that's fine with me. But if the answer is simply they don't think is good enough, then what have Arsenal really signed?
Well, I think when Madrid let him go on loan to Arsenal, there was a toss-up. He could either go back to Real Sociedad on loan, or he could go to Arsenal. And I think, from what I gather, and this is what Guillaume Balaguer said on his Twitter account, Real Madrid didn't want him to go to Real Sociedad on loan, purely because they are now rivals. Basically, they were like, look, we can't take a chance on him firing Real Sociedad up the league because, given how Real Madrid have run, they've been run quite poorly over the past few years. That's going to make things look even worse. So, yeah, I think that was the main reason behind it. They wouldn't loan him to a rival. He wanted potentially to go back there, but Madrid said no. So it just became Arsenal effectively. So I think that's what happened. But what do you reckon, Becky? What are you saying about the signing?
Yeah, I think with this one, the term free hit comes to mind with Ødegaard. He's a name that's, like Reece said, seems to have been around all my life. He's been around for years, and his name's never really gone away. And like we said, with these sort of loan deals, what's the risk? I mean, they've just shipped Ozil off the books, which is an absolute truckload of money every week that they've now got back. And I don't know the numbers behind the Ødegaard deal, but I can't imagine that he's on anything astronomical. It's probably relatively reasonable for his age.
Yeah, it is.
It's very much a free hit. Yes, it will provide competition in those areas for them. So it could go well. You know, he stayed around decent clubs, Madrid, Sociedad. Like Reece said, his numbers were okay. Was it something like 6 goals, 4 assists, or 4 goals, 6 assists last season? Whichever round it was, which is, it's not fantastic, but he's still young. He's 22, so going to a club like Arsenal under Arteta, they're worse managers to go to if you have game time for your development. And this Arsenal side at the moment is full of youngsters that are doing well. Look at Smith Rowe, Saka, absolutely fantastic at the moment. So if they brought him in for competition and he's going to get game time, there is a real possibility that we could see part of this Ødegaard that they'd always talked about that we would see. And if he doesn't, he'll simply just go back to Real Madrid, and that will be that, and then we'll forget about him again. It'd be nice to have him in the Premier League, and we can sort of see him firsthand now, hopefully, every week.
Yeah, what about Arteta as well? Like, one of the things that inspires me, gives me confidence about this signing, because I do think it will be a good signing. I'm just racking my brains, and I can't think of a signing that Arteta has made at Arsenal that hasn't at least added to the team in some way. You look at Gabriel, you look at Pablo Mari, you look at Tierney,
Suarez maybe to a degree
as well, yeah. And Suarez I think was an Emery signing. So
was he? I can't remember.
Yeah, so I can't really think of many, or at least even one to the top of my head.
Willian maybe.
I suppose Willian, but again, a free signing. There's not been many that really haven't been good, and even Willian had an early run of form at the start of the season. So I'm confident that Arteta knows what he's doing. He's got a vision, he's got a style of play, and he thinks that Ødegaard fits into that style of play. And you've got to say, with Arsenal, the funds are so limited. I mean, probably had to set up a GoFundMe page or something to get this one up the line. I don't think that they would have signed Ødegaard without careful consideration, and also a huge amount of conversation with Arteta about whether he would play and whether he would want Ødegaard. And obviously that answer is yes. And I, for one, I'm excited to watch him play.
Yeah, it's going to be a good signing. I was going to say earlier on, lads, Ødegaard's debut could be against Manchester United as well, which would be very, very tasty indeed, because that Arsenal team are on fire right now. Obviously, we mentioned them a few weeks back, and we said, again, Arteta should have more time. And our vindication has been proved correct again. So, yeah, vindication for us. Pod-wise, lads, I mean, I don't really have anything else I was looking to go over. It's not the biggest news week. We'll have some more guests coming shortly. Were there any other sort of topics you wanted to bring up before we go?
There was one thing I wanted to get your opinion on, guys. I know, Spooner, you might have something to say about all this because you love all the theories about envelopes being passed around and what have you. It's just the news about Barcelona this week. I mean, we knew they were in a mess. We knew they were in a mess. But I mean, obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, this is the news that it's come out that they're 1.25 billion in debt. They have stadium renovations ongoing. The players haven't been paid. They only get paid twice a year, so they get paid 6 monthly, and they haven't been paid this time around. We've got Messi who wants to leave. They've got a squad that's getting worse almost every transfer window. A manager who's not great. And what happens to Barcelona now? I mean, their royal family, I don't think, is going to bail them out. I don't see how they get out of it.
The long and short of it is I don't think they do get out of it initially. I think, am I right in thinking, lads? Because I read this again because someone made an interesting point on Twitter. Barcelona is purely owned by the fans. Is that not what it is? Or am I mistaken?
I think so.
Barcelona is not owned by a consortium or a person. It's owned by the fans. So if Barcelona become insolvent, I think there was some sort of grey area as to what happens with them. I mean, look, initially, I've said this before, right? And I'll end this podcast with this. Fucking Lionel Messi is draining that club dry, and he has been draining them for years. If he loved that club, he would go.
He tried. They basically held him at ransom.
This lad, he could have gone before that, right? Look, he knew Barcelona were in a mess, and he's continued to. Whilst that debt has been piling up, Lionel Messi, right? He's a truffle pig. He's got his nose in everything, right? He knows what's going on at Barcelona, from the women, right, serving paella in the canteen, to the youth players, to the guys in suits. He knows it all, right? He has continually took 500 grand a week from that club. And at some point, if I love a club like that, I go, look, lads, I don't really want to be here. This isn't working. And I'd have just tried to go. And if this will be a true test of Lionel Messi's character now, right? Because Barcelona, they can't move forward without Lionel Messi going. And if Lionel Messi in the summer doesn't leave and tries to extend his contract, just know that he's not the icon people think he is. Because that's the epitome of selfishness if he stays.
I mean, realistically here, he had a £1 billion buyout clause, and he waited until last summer to really kick up a stink about it. It was heavily publicised that he had the £1 billion buyout, and they're £1 billion in debt. I mean, who's to say that wasn't a play to try and help the club out? We just can't speculate.
No, yeah. I know. Go on, Becky, go
on. Yeah, for me, it seems like it runs a little bit deeper than that as well. I think it's bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and there's people running that club that probably have, well, no real regard for the situation which they were headed into financially, because, you know, we've known for years that Messi has been on absolutely extortionate amount of money, and he's not the only one. I believe there's one or two others, not sure exactly who they were, who were earning within the millions a month, maybe even a week. There was a couple on 700,000-800,000, and the majority of the rest on 200,000-400,000 a week, which seems like the most unsustainable situation really for even for a club the size of Barcelona. It's been the beginning of the end of Messi for about a year now. I don't really know where I stand on him leaving the club. Could he have done more? Could he have not? We did a whole episode on that, and that is a difficult one. But £1.25 billion of debt, I don't know how they got to that point, with it getting this bad. So all else being said, they're third in the league at the moment. I think they were like seventh at one point. They are slowly creeping up that table, but it's a mess, an absolute mess. I don't know if they get bailed out by anybody. I'm not really too up, like you say, Spoon, on how it really works if the club's going bust. But what else can you say? It's an absolute just comedy of errors there at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, there is no bailout. There is no Barcelona bailout from what I gather, from what I read. How they move forward, I mean, I honestly don't know if a consortium or an individual would have to buy Barcelona, at which point they would then have to obviously not just buy Barcelona, but they'd have to restructure Barcelona as a whole. So you'd have to wipe away the debt they've got, plus you'd have to then invest in the squad. You need someone there immediately that's got about 5 or 6 billion and has a real passion for Barcelona. So I don't know how it ends, but I know where the next chapter begins, and it's without Lionel Messi. And let me tell you that this next season for Barcelona will be very definitive in Lionel Messi's career, because if he stays there and continually takes money from them, it's not a good look. If he leaves, right, we know we can all say that chapter was beautiful. God bless. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We'll go our separate ways. But just know, if he stays this summer and continually takes that wage, there's huge question marks over his legacy. And I'll leave it at that for the Messi fanboys. That's my take. What do you reckon, lads? Anything else you want to say on Barca? No, we're all good. We'll leave it to the accountants to sort that out then, so that's fine. All right, so if you have been watching, make sure you like and subscribe, all that good jazz. Subscribers, as I said earlier on, we're coming up to 1,000 now. So that's our first big goal of the year. Loads of interviews coming up as well, some really good guests too. And if you're looking to come on and you're watching this, drop us a DM, or if you've got any questions, we're always happy to answer them. So yeah, like the video, subscribe. We'll be back next week and we'll have more news, and we'll see you then, people. Take care. Ciao.